Howdy, folks. It's Meandering Mike in the Man Cave of Madness. It is in the middle of the morning, and today we are doing an unboxing, an unbagging of Mukden 1905. This segment is another one in our series called Hexagon Alley, the dark back alleyways of Hex Encounter Wargame. Today we're jumping in the Wayback Machine to, I believe, about 1976. This is another title from Spence and Gabel Games. We had done Tannenberg, yes, the misspelled version with the U, Tannenberg earlier. This is their Mukden title. Let's open her up and see what we've got. All right, so some Ziploc bags are harder to get into. Now this one has, I don't know if this is the original Ziploc or not. Probably not. It looks too newish to be something from the 70s. Did they even have Ziploc bags of that kind? They had plastic bags, but... All right, looking at the counters first. You can see, well, that registration is not good. You can see that that's almost cut off there. Wow, look at, it's not even straight. the cut, the die cut, that is strange. All right, how does it look from the back? Well, there's no image on the back, so that don't matter. They do have blanks, so you could make your own spares or whatnot. Wow, some of these are not cut through. Look at that. That's gonna be one heck of a big, I might do a little X-Acto hobby knife type work to cut those through better before trying to punch these out. That's gonna potentially rip and tear too much. All right, the Russians seem to be a little better. At least the title's not cut off onto part of the counters. But they're close. They have the same kind of issues. I would assume that would be identical layout. So the weird odd shape of that would come in the right place. Yeah, so it was the same die for cutting these two separate little mini sheets. So the imperfection in the cuts are in the same place, but yeah, depending on how they lined up. Wow, look at how their little corner registrations are so far off. Wow. All right. Hey, when you're trying to make something on your own, you know, and it's way back then, that's, you know, got to give them credit for actually doing stuff. Okay, so this is a rule book, and there's a map, but this is a letter. I'm gonna. Yeah, you can read that, maybe. Can I zoom in a little bit more? Hope you enjoy your copy of Mukden 1905. First in a plant's house. So this was before the Tannenberg game. Oh, yeah. Next two games will be Königgrätz and Tannenberg in March 77. So this other game was either published in, you know, like January or February, this game here, or in 1976. Map here has a 1976 date on it, which, you know, sometimes you end up having a copyright or a date that ends up you publishing after the fact, but they would have had a window of 2 months to publish this in 77. So I'm going to assume this actually came out in 76. We'll check later to see what it says on Board Game Geek, but that's not always accurate. Yep. Other titles. Wow, there's a whole big list of here that I know they did not do all these. I think they only came up with 4 or 5 titles in total. I think they ended up doing the Kaiserschlacht. Sounds familiar. I don't know if they ended up doing it on Brusilov, Sevastopol, Gallipoli. I don't remember. Kaiserschlacht. That sounds very familiar. I think they did that one. Anyway, wow, there's James E. Gabel with his address. I wonder if he's still there. I think I heard somewhere. I think Nengoy said that he figured out he was still alive somewhere. All right, so they actually have color on the front part of it, at least. Okay, let me zoom out more, so you can see the overall. You might not be able to read it, or you probably can if you end up zooming in, but I need to show more of the rule book at once so people can get the bigger picture. This is not designed to this is not your typical like folded and this is like glued here. There's like an edge here where these were glued together. That's the middle part, but yeah, so it's like if you folded this open, it would crease in a weird way. And it's like maybe an 1/8 of an inch of glue or something there. Interesting little attempt at binding it. Instead of a staple in the middle, a saddle stapler. All right, so this is old school typewriter style font. Movement, stacking, zones of control, supply, Russian command control, combat, determining victory, game tables, and designer's notes. Division to brigade level. Russo-Japanese War. Each game turn is 1 day. Each hex represents 3 miles. Infantry, cavalry, artillery, and leaders. Oh. Here we go. This little, can you see that right there? Edition 1, August 76. So that one up there is a page number, because here's page 2. So it's a weird place to put the page numbers. Up near the top to the upper right of each page. That is just weird. But it is what it is. But then there's a actual date up there. August 76, edition 1. Which is weird that this game is technically the 3rd edition, because I believe, at least according to Noble Knight, this had actual counters. The first 2 editions, oh, we're losing a unit. It's coming out. Stay. I should not handle these too much. Yeah, it's the 3rd edition actually had real counters, die-cut counters, whereas the other ones, you had to cut them out yourself, like they were on just cardboard or paper, or I think one version was just paper. You had to mount them yourself. The other one, they were like mounted on cardstock, but you had to cut them out. Here's the map. Let's finish looking at that rule book, though. So the rule book is edition 1, which you can see there in that first page upper thing here. So they didn't change the rule book, but the physical components, at least in terms of the counters, had different editions. Leader abbreviations, different unit counters, Imperial Guard, Kobe, Reserve, East Siberians, etc. All right, so it's an I go, you go. Japanese player turns first. Supply, judgment, movement, combat. Then the Russian, who has a command control phase. At least they tell you right here. Go see Rule 5. Supply, movement, combat. And at the conclusion of the Russian player turn, you advance the turn track. Movement. Stacking 2 divisions may be stacked per hex. Brigades counting as a half. Regiments as a quarter. That's a lot. Normally that would be a third, but no one wants to add thirds and mix with halves. May stack, the Japanese may stack 1 artillery unit and the Russians 1 leader. So the Japanese have artillery and the Russians have leaders. Zones of control. Okay, the big question is, can you leave them and must you attack? 2 additional points to enter an enemy zone of control. Wow, that's heavy. 2 additional to enter. Russian leaders and Japanese artillery do not have zones of control. Obviously, if you have to retreat into a zone of control, you are eliminated. Cavalry units Do not exert zone of control into or from rough terrain. Interesting, overlapping. It's just normal. Supply may not be traced. However, friendly unit in the hex negates this effect. Supply, blah, 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 control combat rule. Adjacent, the discretion, never forced to attack. All right, so let's see. Zones of control. Did we not have a movement rule? Movement rule. Did it mention zones of control in it before they actually had the zone of control rule? A rough terrain, cross river, or move adjacent. Cumulative, of course, fixing the map, roads. So they don't mention zone of controls there. Affect movement units. So entering 2. Overlapping. So it does not say you cannot go from zone to zone, other than having to pay 2. So you have to engage, to get up there, you have to enter 2, and then if you're trying to move, penetrate, it's an additional 2. Unless there's something else in here. Wow, these are pretty short. Initial dispositions, i.e. the setup. Designer notes, yes, fairly simple game. Indeed it is. However, it is not simplistic. It says, Spence and Gabel, game design, Richard Spence, okay. Decisive victory, victory condition, fortified lines, field fortifications, all units would attack, or halved, okay. Rivers, have, okay, I like that, so if these guys are attacking us the river and some of the guys aren't, instead of the all or nothing, is everyone going across the river double defender? Otherwise, instead it's like, hey, whoever's attacking across the river is halved, period, end of sentence. I like that better. And fortifications are halving it, so they're on hex sides instead of in a hex, so they can do the same thing. Now, interesting, rivers says cost 2 MPs to cross river hex side. Doesn't really word it as cost 2 additional. So if you were going across river into the rough, is that 4? It's 2 to enter. It's 2 to cross. There are indeed rivers next to rough. So is that 4? Is it 3? Now that's normally it would be 2 additional to cross the hex side. So 3 to go like from here to here would be 4. But the way they worded that there, it did say cumulative on movement too. So yes, so it's 2 to cross the river. It's 2 to enter rough. It says plane, it says no effect. It actually costs 1 MP to enter. See, technically that should say 1 MP to enter. Now they said that in the rule there, costs 1 MP to enter planes, but they should say it here too. So looking at the combat results table, it is very similar to Napoleon at War, except, however, so starting with a 1-to-1, 50% defender retreat, 50% attack retreats. At 1-to-2, it's worse in that you only have a 1/6 chance of retreating the defender and 5/6 chance of the attack retreating. Or normally at Napoleon at War, it would be 2 chances. Now, the 1-to-3 is less bloody because there's no attacker eliminated. However, it's all attacker retreats. Why you'd want to, now it says odds at less than 1-to-3 are not allowed. Oh, I don't know why you'd want to attack unless you wanted to retreat. Push me back, push me away. Wow, there's a exchange at 3-to-1. There's no chance to fail. So 3-to-1 are the magic odds. You do not fail at 3-to-1. You're going to retreat them or get an exchange. While Napoleon at War, there'd be a 1/6 chance of defender retreat. I mean, attacker retreat, sorry. So 5, 6. And then there doesn't start showing up a DE until 4 to 1. But then there'd be a chance of exchange on those. So there's always, from 3 to 1 up, there's always exactly 1/6 chance of an exchange. Or in the Napoleonic War, there's at 5 and 6 to 1, there's a 2, there's no 7 to 1 column in Napoleonic War. There'd be 2/6 chance of an exchange here. And that's why in Napoleonic War, you can voluntarily reduce your odds, and sometimes you want to do that. Sometimes getting too many exchanges is not good. Sometimes people, I see many playthroughs where people just, glad to have as high of odds as they can, and they start getting those exchanges and like, yeah, maybe reduce the odds. Maybe only get a retreat. Maybe even go all the way down to 3 to 1 if you're playing the surround game. All right, so this is interesting. It's very less bloody, except for that 3 to 1, but that's guaranteed success at 3 to 1. Guaranteed. So at 2 to 1, it's still defender, retreat, 2/3 attackers. That's also the same. So 1 to 1 and 2 to 1 are exactly like Napoleonic War. And so you could play push and shove games. And the advantage of 3 to 1 is you're going to guarantee success, but you could get the exchange. All righty. So, yeah, as far as I can tell, you may move zone to zone. I did not see a restriction against that. Unless I missed it. It might be somewhere that... Zone of controls are not affected by the number of units. 2 additional to enter. Forced to retreat into are eliminated. It does not say there that friendly guys negate that. It only says it for supply. Under combat, is there a separate... Okay, retreat priorities. When required to retreat, they must, strict code, a vacant hex first, not in enemy control. Then a hex containing friendly units, not in enemy zone of control. Units are always retreated to force an enemy zone of control, even if friendly units are good. All right, so there's no saving on a retreat. So it's dangerous to move zone to zone, in that if you get retreated, there's no saving you. You can't retreat back to where you came from, penetrating the line. You're going to get your nose beat, but it might be worth it. If you can penetrate the line and boom, blow a big hole, eliminate guys by forcing them to retreat surrounded. But if you fail, you've stuck your nose out. Advance. Yep. Defending units may never occupy a hex vacated by attacking units. So there's no advance winning as a defender, which a number of other games do. So these attacker retreats that you get here, you cannot advance as the defender in this game. Cavalry units. All right, cavalry only get their full strength attacking other cavalry units. When attacking a hex containing any infantry, they are halved, rounding up. However, when cavalry units are attacked solely by infantry, they may elect to retreat before the odds are totaled. They must retreat 2 hexes in compliance with retreat priority. Now, 1 hex. Yeah, so interesting. Normally, retreats are 1 hex, but retreat before combat with cavalry against infantry, when you're retreating, you retreat 2 hexes. That is interesting. Artillery, all right. Only Japanese has independent artillery. Bombardment. Apply their attack factor, adding it to attacking strength within 2 hexes. May also attack alone. They're not affected, so they can't get an attack or retreat. If they're shooting, bing, and they miss, they get it, they ignore it. That would also mean the exchange. If they're shooting alone, they get an exchange. If they're adjacent, they do suffer. All right, so if you can bombard and get a 3-to-1 odds with the artillery alone, all by themselves, you could roll that one, get the exchange, and not be affected. All right, folks, let's go look at the map. We've looked at enough of the rules. We've interesting little variants here with the thing. It's very, very close to Napoleonic War, but with some subtle differences, which are interesting. The fact that you can move zone to zone, but it costs 2 to enter any zone. That's a little interesting. But you cannot retreat in a zone, even into friendly units. So penetrate the lines all you want, but watch out. All right. So okay, so these are ups. So these must be like setup places. But they're from the so I don't know. That's weird. Because obviously here's the title. So normally one player would be sitting here and one here, I would guess. But those letters, there's numbers here. So one side has numbers for their setup. The other one has letters. All right. Look at all these fortifications around Mukden. So the Japanese are down here. The Russians are here. All these letters. The Kamilin Mountains. All right, so this is very, very old school SPI style. Basically got black and blue on a beigeish map. Now, okay, so river names are in blue, town names are in black, all uppercase. Road name is in a smaller font. Imperial Tombs, interesting. I think cities didn't have an effect on combat. No effect. All right, so obviously the rough terrain doubles defenders. The fortification lines are having attackers. The river are having attackers. Right there, this is going to be a slugfest. All right, folks, there's the map. That's Mukden 1905. Which I know very little about the Russo-Japanese War other than the Russians went steaming around with their navy, had traveled all that time, didn't want to stop, didn't want to wait, just let's go, and they got their ass kicked. The navy got kabooted. Do not know anything about the land fighting in the Russo-Japanese War. So, at some point, I will learn more. Play this game, do a little research, all that stuff. So that's my unboxing here. That's almost 25 minutes. But we did get a chance to explore. Looking at these less than stellar counters. But at least they're counters. I don't like having to cut them out myself and all that kind of stuff. So even though I'm going to have to use a knife on that. I mean, this looks nice on the cover on the front here, but that's old style typewriter. Even though this looks printed with that font. This Now, this is a perforated sheet, but 76, there was no IBM PCs out then. This would have been, so like, I think dot matrix printers would have been like 9-pin at that time, running off of like a, I don't know, a K-Pro or something, you know. So I think this is actually like IBM Selectric, where they had the memory, like you could type something in and you'd save it, and then you could print the button, and you know, that ball would go by, and you could type these out, and you could just repeat. So they, you know, I don't know if they, maybe they printed 50 of these. They maybe printed on the typewriter 20 of these, thinking, well, you know, in a few months, 6 months, you know, this deadline will be passed. This will be old news, so you don't want to print out everything for your entire stock. But they only sold 20 copies of this before this was obsolete or something. So that's just a guess. That's so Mukden, published in August of 1976 from Spence and Gabel Games. And so that's our latest session of Hexagon Alley, the dark back roads, back alleyway of Hex and Counter war games. So all you good folks out there, take care and ciao.